Nerdy is defined as someone characterized by an obsessive interest in something. Xbox, Marvel, technology, D&D, Lord of the Rings, escape rooms, Pokemon, Funko Pop, Star Wars, PlayStation, comic books, Magic the Gathering, Nintendo, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. All of that is Tech D-Rob, host of the Nerd News Podcast, your source for everything nerdy.
I realize you guys are all nerds.
And this is the Nerd News Podcast.
Welcome to the Nerd News Podcast. It is, at the earliest, September 26th, when you're listening to this podcast, recorded in the illustrious luxury studios of the Ace and TJ show. My computer's in there uploading stuff, so that's why it's being recorded here. I was trying to get everything uploaded for the show, regular show stuff today, and then go home and record, but I didn't want to just be killing time. So we got a fancy paper-printed version of my notes for today's show, and then I have my phone as a backup for any other information I might need. So let's get started, shall we? The very first thing we're going to talk about is the quick hits, which is what we always do. Video game-wise, today is the release of the Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty update. It's DLC. Now, the 2.0 update released last week, and they recommend if you're going to play the game again, or if it's been a while, just start a new save. That's probably best. The game's completely different from the original release, so it may be a good idea to just refresh yourself from the beginning. Excuse me. And that's on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S and PC, not previous generation consoles, which I'm not 100% sure if it ever came out on those consoles. But I think that might have been part of the issue. I'm not 100% sure, but it is only on next-gen consoles and PC. El Paso Elsewhere is another game that is out today for those same, just for Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One and PC. Mineko's Night Market, I may have said the name wrong. That's on Switch and PC. My Time at Sandrock is on next-gen consoles and PC. And Switch. Paleo Pines is on current and next-gen Xbox and PlayStation, along with Switch and PC. And then Thursday, Infinity Strash Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai is on current and next-gen PlayStation, but only Xbox Series X and S, Switch, PC. So not on the Xbox One. Sonic Frontiers, The Final Horizon. That sounds like a DLC thing. I never played the Sonic Frontiers game, so I don't 100% know if that's like a new release of it or something. But that's on pretty much every console you can think of except for Mac. Cocoon is out for current and next-gen Xbox along with Switch and PC. That's on Friday. And also on Friday, Cypher 007 on iOS. And EA Sports FC 24 is out this weekend, and that is PlayStation, current and next-gen PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. And I think that's what used to be called FIFA, but I think they lost the rights to the name FIFA or something similar to that. Excuse me. On DVD today, you have Elemental, which I watched over the weekend. It was okay. It's not. I'm not going to give a more detailed review up above, but it's fine. It's one of the worst Pixar movies, but it's just not. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just wasn't very good. It's no Soul. It's no Onward. Recent smash hits from Pixar. Insidious: The Red Door is also out on DVD, along with Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and Sympathy for the Devil, which is a Nicolas Cage vehicle, as Riggins would say. It's a Nick Cage vehicle. Digital release this week: Blue Beetle, Gran Turismo, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, and Scooby-Doo and Crypto 2 digital releases. Now, I did see Blue Beetle, and I forgot to include this in my above, but I would highly recommend you go see Blue Beetle. No need to do an in-depth review. It's a fun DC movie, which is in short supply these days. In theaters this weekend, The Creator, which is a sci-fi looking movie, Paw Patrol: The Mighty Movie, and Saw 10, which is being called Saw X, of course, which is supposed to take place shortly after. It doesn't take place after the most recent one or the one before that. It's somewhere in the middle of the timeline, I believe. Look, if you've never seen Saw, you don't care, and if you have seen Saw, you probably also don't care. But I will see it. I like to see things through, especially when the first installment in the series is one of my favorite movies. It's so good. So that is the quick hits for this edition of the Nerd News Podcast. When we return, I will give you my top 25 games of all time. It is a thing that's been going around. I uploaded it to Instagram and Twitter. X over the weekend. And if you saw it, you know what's coming up. But I'll give a little more detail about why these things made my list. And then I have a couple other things to go over as well. So we're going to take a quick break on the Nerd News Podcast, and I'll be right back.
At TechD_Rob on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. More Nerd News Podcast next. Follow TechD_Rob on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. At TechD_Rob. This is the Nerd News Podcast.
Welcome back to the Nerd News Podcast. My name is TechD_Rob, or just Rob. You can call me whatever you want. Over the weekend, for my cousin's 42nd birthday, we did on Saturday we played some escape rooms. Friday we watched Elemental, and I watched him play a game called Lies of P. Now, Lies of P is a Dark Souls type game, but it's not made by the same company. And he barely played it for like 30 minutes, and I saw him die at least 8 times. It looks like it's carrying the mantle of Souls-like very well. I wish to give it a try myself, but I haven't had the opportunity yet. So that was what I did on Friday. Saturday, we did an escape room in the morning. Went to lunch at a fantastic eating establishment that I will not mention by name because they don't sponsor me. And I also don't want to get someone in trouble at their job because of the story I'm going to tell. So on the regular show this week, Extra Funny is when we talked about this. I went to lunch at a place where you kind of build your own meal. They give you a bowl and you can scoop whatever meats, vegetables, and sauce you want, and they'll put it over like a bed of rice, something like that. It's I don't want to give too many details so as to keep the anonymity of this place intact. So it was myself, my cousin, a friend of mine that I met at the escape room I used to work at. He works at the new escape room that he works at the escape room we did in the morning. He wasn't there, however. His brother's wife was there. His brother's wife's friend was there. I'm friends with them as well, but it's just to give you a picture. Her boyfriend was there, and then we had another person by the name. No, I'm not kidding. Oh God, I almost gave her name. But we had another friend of theirs with us who I barely know. I've been to a couple events where everybody, joins together and does these things, like Friendsgiving, and we ate. It was delicious. And there was a boba tea place right next door. And as the females in the group went to the boba store, the males in the group hung out outside waiting for them to finish up. So we could head back to the house of the brother of my friends to play board games and D&D later, which that's irrelevant to the story, but I'm giving you too many details. As I was the only one standing, I think. Maybe my cousin was standing as well, but I kind of stood in between the place we had just eaten and a boba tea store, and I was outside. And I kind of looked over, because I heard the door open, from the eating establishment that we had just gone to. And our server was coming straight to me. And then he looked at me and said, "Can I be completely unprofessional for a minute?" And my first response was, "Huh?" Because I was like, surely I didn't hear what I thought I just heard. And then he repeated his question, "Can I be completely unprofessional for a second?" And I must have said, okay, or sure. But then he went, is name redacted that I almost gave you a minute ago, is she single? And I, barely knowing this person, looked at him and goes, "I have no idea. I barely know her." And those were the only words that I could utter. It probably came off a little bit rude, but I kind of thought that this was a weird situation. I know this isn't nerd news, but it's an interesting situation. And then he went in and asked her if she was single, or maybe he asked her to go on a date. I don't know exactly how it went. She turned him down, and he left promptly. He didn't stick around and try to convince her. He was very nice which I guess is the bare minimum. I mean, if you're going to applaud someone for taking no for an answer, what a terrible world we live in these days. That is where you go, oh my gosh, they took no for an answer. How nice of them. It shouldn't be that way. That should be the norm. But that's not the world in which we live. But she turned him down, and I believe I was the only one who was like, this man's doing this when he's on the clock. Why is this not weirder to everybody? I don't know. Maybe, and he was, okay, this girl, I believe in her 20s. I can't confirm one way or the other because I literally know almost nothing about her. This man, however, was definitely into his 40s, maybe late 40s. I don't know. But, he shot his shot, as they say. And I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I thought it was really, really weird. So, I mean, if you think it's weird too, send me a message on Instagram. Tell me your thoughts on this. I'm just curious. And maybe I'm overreacting. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to actual nerd news, shall we? So Resident Evil 8 Village is what it's called. And if you are interested in playing that on your brand new iPhone you just got from the iPhone 15 Pro lineup, the Pro Max, you will be able to play Resident Evil 8 on that console October 30th, which is just around the corner. You can play it right before Halloween on your brand new iPhone Pro or greater, Pro or Pro Plus. So they're really touting this as a game console, and again, I don't see it being that way unless there's like an easy way to plug it into a TV. I mean, I understand it'd be cool to have a game console on the go, but also, again, this doesn't have a controller like easily attached to it. I know there are a lot of mounts where you can hold it like this, but again, it just doesn't feel natural to me. So I think I may be in the minority here, but I think it's going to be a hard sell to use this as a game console. We'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but we'll find out. A tentative deal has been struck with the Writers Guild of America. Still, however, no Screen Actors Guild agreement, though. So we could still be looking at weeks of strikes and no work going on, but maybe not. Maybe we can get them all sorted out soon. Let's see what else. Like I said, over the weekend, I did an escape room in the morning. We went to lunch, had the awkward exchange, and then I played D&D/board games for the rest of the evening until about 2 a.m. And I ate like a pig. So let me give you a brief. We also talked about this on the show, but just to give you another brief rundown of my eating on Saturday, lunchtime, noonish. We went to this place where you stack it high with meats and veggies and sauces, and mine was on a bed of fried rice. And then that was lunch. Went home, got stuff to play D&D and such, and then went to the friend's house that I spoke of earlier, and we played a game called Betrayal. Betrayal at the house on... Betrayal at the... I don't know, but it's a game called Betrayal. There's a whole bunch of different iterations of it. This is the 3rd edition of this particular game. There's also a Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which is D&D themed. It was a lot of fun. It also gives your characters abilities, which is something that is not present in other versions of Betrayal. Anyway, Betrayal is a great game. Love it. Had a lot of fun playing it. And then we jumped into D&D. So I played D&D until about... let's say dinner was around 6 or 7ish, and one of the friends left to go to Office Depot to pick up something, and also picked up some dinner for everyone at Popeyes. So at Popeyes, I had a blackened chicken sandwich with bacon and cheese, delicious. I had a 12-piece nugget, again being a real fatty today, and some strawberry biscuits, which were delicious. Very, very good strawberry biscuits. Highly recommend if you've never had those from Popeyes. They may be better than Bo-Berry biscuits, but maybe I'm being crazy. Excuse me. But that wasn't it. That wasn't. We had a 4th meal, and at midnight. I hate calling it that, but that Taco Bell started it. And that's what we had. Taco Bell. I had a cheesy gordita crunch, a beefy 5-layer burrito, cheesy fiesta potatoes, and an chicken enchilada burrito. And it was a lot of food, but it was delicious. And I had a lot of delicious, refreshing alcoholic beverages that evening as well. My cousin was the driver. So a lot of fun playing D&D over the weekend. And I brought that back up because on my list, I forgot that I didn't go further from there. Over the weekend, there was Magic Worlds, and I won't get into details of who won or what won because it's, who cares. But there are new MTG crossovers coming along. By the end of the year, there is going to be a Lord of the Rings, another one, but it's mostly just, Jumpstart packs, which are you buy 2 Jumpstart packs and you can mix them together for a deck. They contain cards that make synergy between each other in one deck and then the other deck. It's kind of like a game of Smash Up if you've ever played that, but with Magic cards. That's cool. That's called Jumpstart, and there's Lord of the Rings Jumpstart coming. There's also Lord of the Rings. I don't know what they called them, but it's like 6 cards will make a scene from the movie, and it looks really pretty and it's beautiful. Also coming, Jurassic Park is going to be something from the new set, which I can't remember the new set. Let's see. Next MTG set is something about Ixalan, maybe? Or is that right? Let me check. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Wilds of Eldraine. Yeah, the Lost Caverns of Ixalan is in November. So that set will bring back dinosaurs in the set and will also introduce Jurassic Park cards to the game. Now, the Jurassic Park cards aren't going to be standard legal. They're going to be, I don't know the legality of the sets, like what you can play them in, but I'm pretty sure standard won't be a thing for Jurassic Park cards. Also announced were Evil Dead cards and Princess Bride cards. Now, those last 2 are only going to be as like reprints of other cards, but giving them new names. If you've seen the Godzilla cards they did, they'll be very similar to that. It'll have a name from whichever property, and it'll have another name underneath, which is the card that it is a reprint of. And it's a way for them to sell these crossover things without introducing new cards. Now, the Jurassic Park cards are indeed new cards, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes legally as far as cards go. But yeah, so that is the MTG crossovers. There's a new patch out for Baldur's Gate 3. It's patch number 3. Huge update. They aren't messing around with these updates. They're bringing them out fast and furious, and the game is really thriving. It's killing it. Like, people are still loving the game. I still love the game. I can't wait to play more. I mean, I've almost beaten my second playthrough. I might do a third. I really might. It's that good. It's that good of a game. It's wild. Activision Blizzard deal has been approved by UK regulators, and it should be complete in October, which is good news if you're a fan of Xbox, unless you think this is going to make Xbox lazier, and I don't think it will. Right off the top of my head, they still have to compete with PlayStation, so I don't think they can rest on their laurels, as it were, as far as that goes. So, a thing that's been going around is people's top 25 games of all time. And I haven't done this in a while, but we're going to take another break in the Nerd News podcast. This is a long episode, so bear with me. I'll be right back.
At TechD_Rob on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. More Nerd News podcast next. Follow TechD_Rob on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at TechD_Rob. This is the Nerd News Podcast.
Welcome back to the Nerd News Podcast. Again, a long episode today. You're welcome. I mean, if you're still here. I mean, maybe you got bored when I started rambling on. But I think if you listen to the podcast, you know, sometimes I might ramble. But it's meant well, right? And I'm doing it right now. But anyway, I digress. That should be my catchphrase. So what I want to do is I have on my phone my list of top 25 games of all time. And my criteria was I didn't want to use a game from the same franchise twice. Well, I broke that rule once. And I'll tell you why I did when I get there. But first, I want to go through a quick list of what IGN has as their top 10 shows of all time. And I kind of disagree with number 1. But it's Parks and Rec's number 10. Great show, highly recommended. Game of Thrones would be higher on this list if it weren't for that last season. I guarantee it. The Twilight Zone, I mean, it was groundbreaking. It was, when at its time, it was, nothing else would come up like it for a long time. So I completely get why that one's high on the list. Mad Men, I've heard great things. It's not a show that I would be interested in personally, so I just haven't looked into it. The Sopranos, another thing, I'm not into the mob movies. It's not for me, so I wasn't really into The Sopranos, but I've heard good things and people love it. Twin Peaks is a show that I think I would enjoy, and I probably should check it out, but I just haven't. That was number 5. Number 4 is X-Files, which, again, probably a show I would enjoy now, but when I was a kid, it terrified me. I couldn't watch it. Number 3 is a show that I recently just got to experience for the first time, and that was Breaking Bad. Now, this is where the list loses me. Breaking Bad is number 1. Almost everybody else would agree. Now, I've never seen the number 1, so maybe that's not fair of me to say, but I've heard more good things about number 3, Breaking Bad, than I have about any of the other shows on this list. So, let's go back. Let's continue through the list real quick. The Simpsons is at number 2. Undeniable. They broke ground that everyone would follow. Family Guy, South Park. The Simpsons are pioneers, and they did it better than anybody ever has. I liked Family Guy a lot when I was younger. It got really old really quickly when I grew up, to be fair. South Park I still enjoy. Now, South Park, I don't know where it ranked on this list, but it better be top 20, top 25. Because, I mean, obviously, without The Simpsons, South Park would never exist. But South Park, much better show in general to me. And then number 1 is The Wire. Now, TJ's been watching it recently. He says it's incredible, so good. But I just cannot see how that is better than Breaking Bad. It's not a show that every time I told somebody I've never seen it, they went, "You've never seen this?" Which is what happened every time I told somebody I never watched Breaking Bad. And then when I watched it, I was hooked. Maybe I need to give The Wire a try, but I just wanted to bring up that list real quick. Okay, done with my paper now. So on we go to my top 25 games of all time. Let's start with 25. And this is a game that I just knew that I had to have on the list simply because it's groundbreaking, and it's a title that I spent many an hour playing, and I've played it on many a console, and that is Skyrim, Elder Scrolls V. Skyrim is a top-tier example of an open-world game done right. People still play it to this day, and people will continue to play it for a long, long time. It's a fun game. Next on my list is a game called Super Mario Sunshine, and I love it. This is a game that I worked a job at Carowinds, which is a local amusement park. I worked there for at max 2 weeks, at least a week. I don't remember exactly. It was a flash in the pan, as it were. But that game was the reason I wanted this job, and I regret none of it. The game was incredible, and I would play it again if I had the capabilities, but like just at home if I had the game of it still. But it is my favorite Mario game by a long shot. It was not intuitive. It was inventive. It threw what you thought on its head. It's basically Super Mario 64, but with better graphics and a gimmick, which is something that the Mario games have had for a long time. But this gimmick was unique. So it's Mario with a water gun cleaning up a city. It sounds stupid, but I loved it. Next on the list is Rock Band. Rock Band, I would have put Guitar Hero, but Rock Band perfected it. They really did. Guitar Hero, if you wanted to play just guitar, Guitar Hero is superior. If you want to play drums, Rock Band's where you go. I loved the drums on the game. I play the guitar. It's fine. It's fun. Singing was fun on Rock Band, but drums is where I could play this game every day. I love playing the drums on it. It's fun. Next on my list is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Obviously, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 had the great soundtrack. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 had a good soundtrack too, but Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 is where they really perfected the game. It is the peak of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater franchise. Portal 2 is on my list. I remember this game came out when I was still working at Best Buy. I was either early in my radio career or still in school for radio. But it was a game that I talked about with my friends every day until we all beat it. And the puzzles, masterfully done. It was incredible. Next on my list is a game called Star Wars Jedi Knight. Now, Star Wars Jedi Knight is a sequel to Dark Forces, which is Dark Forces was one of the first Star Wars first-person shooters. It has a character by the name of Kyle Katarn, who I don't know if he's in any other Star Wars mediums, but I grew to love this character through this game, onto Jedi Knight 2, and I think Jedi Academy he was also in. I mean, it was a character that I followed the game series because I liked the character. And Kyle Katarn never made his way to live action, which is a shame. It's a real shame. And I hope Cal Kestis makes his way to live action soon. That is the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Jedi Outcast, those games. I hope his character makes it. His character makes it there as well. Fallout 3 is next on my list. Now, Fallout 3 is the game for me, like that Bethesda made. It's just the best. Fallout New Vegas was good, but it was a rehash of Fallout 3, and they added some stuff. It's probably on surface level, it's a better game, but it didn't really change much. But they took what worked in Fallout 3 and just added new stuff. So, I mean, in theory, Fallout New Vegas is probably a better game, but it felt like I was playing the same game, so that's why I wasn't as excited about it. Next on my list is Tekken 3. This is a game where I would play as the character King and try to learn all the combos because it was wrestling moves. In a game like Tekken, it was just incredible. I loved it so much. Next on my list is Spider-Man 2, and I don't mean the the new Spider-Man series at all. This is from the original Xbox. I bought a green see-through Xbox that came with this game, and I put more hours in this game than I'd like to admit. And it wasn't well fleshed out, but the swinging in it worked, and it was awesome. It was fun. I loved every minute of it. Now, if I really thought about the list better, maybe the other Spider-Man games better. But this is the new Spider-Man games. They're better. But this Spider-Man game is what really it brought it to life for the first time in a video game to me. Elden Ring is next on my list. Now, normally I'm not a Souls-like enjoyer, which this is made by the people who made Dark Souls. So this is true Souls-like. But I beat it. And it took a lot of focus. It took a lot of learning from me. And I'm not patient in video games. And this is why the Souls-like games weren't for me. But thanks to my friends who they made fun of me about the game, but also kind of cheered me on at the same time. You understand. They pushed me to beat it, and I did, and it felt great. I even pushed the optional boss. I even beat the optional boss, Melania. And I mean, I'm not beating her with a dance pad like some people did. I mean, I'm not that good at video games, but that was an achievement for me, and will always be an achievement that I hold dearly. Next on my list is WCW NWO Revenge. Now, I could have picked any of these WCW Nintendo 64 games and it would have worked just fine. This is just the first one that popped up when I was searching, but they were awesome. They were the best wrestling video games that I ever played, and it's a shame they're not good like that anymore. Metal Gear Solid 2 is an example of a game that the story makes almost no sense. There's some, I mean, it makes some sense, but it's a crazy story, but it's accented by incredible stealth gameplay. And if you don't want to be stealthy, you don't have to be stealthy. You can play it the other way, and it's difficult, but it's fun. And it's a game that I played a lot of, and I will be playing it again when I get the Metal Gear Solid trilogy, or whatever it's called, Metal Gear Collection when it comes out. Next on my list is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, this is the first game that breaks the pattern of only one game per series, because I also picked The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask as the next one. I put them together. Tears of the Kingdom is one of the most technically sound games that I've ever played. Everything does what it's intended to do. There are very few glitches that I've found, very few bugs. It's just a good game that really does what it says you can do, which is whatever you want. It's wild. And Majora's Mask is just my favorite Zelda game. It's a lot of fun, and it was a dark edition of the game, and it really worked. It worked really well. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is my next one. That is what I call the first-person shooter renaissance. Now, I know Halo was around first, but I just wasn't a Halo fan. It wasn't for me. Call of Duty 4 is when they finally got first-person shooting right. And they've only bettered the way that first-person shooters play since then, but they've watered down most of the other stuff. Like, if nothing else, we can all agree that the Call of Duty games controls work flawless. They're the best first-person shooter controls I've ever played, personally. And I think most people would agree. Next on my list is Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. Again, I could have handpicked any of the games. Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, or Uncharted 4. Uncharted 1 was a little rough, but 2, 3, and 4, fantastic games. Next is Batman Arkham City. Now, Arkham Asylum, great game. Not as good as Arkham City. Arkham Knight, good game. No, this was the peak. Batman Arkham City was peak Batman. It was incredible. Next is a game that I've played and beat over 100 times. I can't tell you exactly because most of it was when I was a kid, when the Super Nintendo was out, but it is Mega Man X, and I would play that to this day. If I was at home and I randomly saw it, I would pop it in and play it. I do have it on Switch, when I remember that I have the X collection and I'm bored, I'll play Mega Man X. I'll play the others as well. I love the Mega Man X series. It's so good. Next is Borderlands 2, the loot shooter. This was the peak of loot shooters. Borderlands 3 was okay. Tiny Tina's Wonderland was good. But Borderlands 2, peak. That was the best, and it's a lot of fun. Next on my list is the 2018 God of War. Now, it was hard for me to choose between regular God of War and God of War Ragnarok. They're both great. Ragnarok has an incredible story, but the story in this one's really good too. But I think I go with this one simply because it's the one that lets you learn what happened to Kratos from the previous old games. And it's beautifully played, beautifully crafted. The next on the list is The Last of Us. Now, people hate on The Last of Us 2 a lot, and it's fair because The Last of Us 2's story is weak. The Last of Us, however, one of the greatest gaming stories ever written, in all honesty. It was incredible. Next on my list is Baldur's Gate 3. Yes, a brand new game makes it in at number 4 on my list. It's incredible. And I will continue to play this for days. For days, that doesn't mean anything. For weeks, for months, for years. And I feel like this is a franchise that is going to continue, and they're going to continue to get it right because Larian Studios makes everything they make with love. I've tried Divinity Original Sin 2. Plays very similar to this. The art style is a little different, but it seems this is what they know how to do, and they're going to do it well. And I think it's going to be something that grows and grows and grows in the future, and I'm here for it. So we're in our top 3 now, and if you're still here, I appreciate it. If you're not, I understand. I'm a little long-winded today, but Mass Effect 2 is number 3. Now, let me put it this way: the story to gameplay graph would intersect right at Mass Effect 2. So the gameplay continues to get better with each introduction. So Mass Effect 1 played fine. Mass Effect 2 played great. Mass Effect 3 nearly flawless. Mass Effect Andromeda, they really perfected the gameplay. But the story does the same thing but in verse. So Mass Effect 1 story is way better. Mass Effect 2, good story. Mass Effect 3, they really effed it up. Mass Effect Andromeda, awful. Just awful. Hopefully the new Mass Effect game is going to remedy this, and maybe we get another good Mass Effect game, but I'm not holding my breath, is the way I'm going to put it. Resident Evil 2 is on my list here. Now, this was the hardest franchise to not put more than one of. Obviously, besides Legend of Zelda, but I felt those two games were significantly different enough. Resident Evil 2, and I guess I could say the same thing about Resident Evil, but Resident Evil 2 is what really got me hooked on the franchise. Resident Evil 1 is a game that I watched my brother play. I never really played it for myself when it first came out. I watched my brother play it, and it was a lot. It brings back a lot of good memories, but it was scary, and I was a child at the time, but it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And then Resident Evil 2 made its way out, and I rented it from, it was either a local rental store, Blockbuster, Maybe it was Family Video. I don't think Family Video was a thing at the time, but I rented Resident Evil 2 often. It's 2 discs. I beat it more than once on each disc. The Claire and Leon story, I've played through this game many, many times. I love every second of it. Resident Evil 2, not the best Resident Evil, but it's my favorite. Resident Evil 4 is by far the best Resident Evil, and I love it too. Now, my number 1 is very controversial to people, it seems. It is called BioShock Infinite. Now, BioShock is a game that I played later in its life. BioShock 2 had already come out, but I was told, you got to play BioShock. The story in it's incredible. The gameplay is a little weak in BioShock 1. But the story, chef's kiss. Perfect story in BioShock. BioShock Infinite, perfect, but even more perfect than the original. I'm giving 10 out of 10s to BioShock and BioShock Infinite. The stories are independent on surface level until you play the DLC. Now, the DLC is going to tie BioShock 1 and BioShock Infinite together, and that is the reason I can't put the original BioShock and BioShock Infinite as separate entities, because they're not. They are best experienced together. Play BioShock Infinite, then play the DLC for BioShock Infinite. You have to. You owe it to yourself to experience. If you've never played these games and you've never done all of these things, you've never done BioShock, then BioShock Infinite, and then the BioShock Infinite DLC, you haven't experienced the full story, and you're missing out on the best video game story I've ever played. It's that simple. BioShock Infinite, the story will blow your socks off. It'll balls to the walls. I don't think I used that right. I definitely didn't. But anyway, that's my top 25 games. I'd love to hear your thoughts on mine. And again, this is posted on my Instagram. It's posted on my Twitter, now X. Comment on there. Let me know what you think of my list. I would love to hear thoughts, and I will refute your thoughts if you post on there. Just know. But I love a good refuting. I love a good conversation. I'm dying to know what people think. So, my name is Tech D Rob, and I appreciate you hanging with me for this long. I mean, this is the longest Nerd News podcast in years, probably. But I had a lot to talk about. So, and it's turned into a dreary day outside, it looks like. Or maybe these curtains are actually working. I don't know. But thank you for joining me. I will see you next time. Again, follow me, TechD_Rob, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. I really, look, I say it every time, but I plan to do more Twitch. I promise. It'll happen eventually. And if you follow me on Twitch, you can get notified when I do go live. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. This is my new thing. I'm going to snap at the camera and go, I'll see you later.
That's it for this week's Nerd News Podcast. Follow Tech D Rob on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at TechD_Rob. Subscribe now. More nerd news next week.